Welcome back. It is Monday here at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, high atop the 18th fairway, and we're welcoming in Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers, who had a very pedestrian weekend. Hope you enjoyed your time off, Don. I say that jokingly.
I hope you have, because I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, he's Don has been going, if you want to count the coaches shows from last week, so you can just keep on going right into Friday, then Saturday, then again on Sunday, then tonight he'll be at Southern Stone at 7:05 for Inside Indiana Men's Basketball with Mike Whitson, and will Terry Morin be there as well?
Yes,
she'll be there prior, and then tomorrow you've got to move up Inside Indiana Football with Tom Allen to Tuesday at Southern Stone, because on Wednesday, he's back in the broadcast booth for Indiana basketball. He does take off for Thanksgiving, but back in it again Friday and Saturday for Purdue. So enjoy your week.
Yeah, it's going to be busy, but it's a good time of year, especially after you've had a football upset to call and then a couple of basketball games that you won. So it turns out to be a pretty good week after all, and it could have been disastrous going into this week, as we know. So obviously a weekend that was special for Indiana athletics, not just football, basketball, but women's basketball, volleyball won. They knocked off Ohio State. I mean,
number 5. Yeah.
When you think about what Indiana did this past weekend, Scott Dolson's probably going, whew, that was wonderful.
Oh, I guarantee you. Well, the wrestling, while the basketball team was away, the wrestling team knocked off number 23 Princeton in Simon Scott Assembly Hall. And of course, the women team, they're now at 5-0. I just told Dustin earlier, I expect both the men's and women's team to be inside the top 10 when the poll comes out this week.
Very possible. No question about that. But I don't look at the ratings very much because they don't mean much at this time of year. There's no doubt that it is good for the team and for the program and that kind of thing. You want to have that kind of people talking about Indiana again in so many different areas at this point. But the fact of the matter is, at this time of the year, in football, maybe the rankings mean something. They certainly don't in college basketball.
Nope.
And this, I don't even know where to start, Don. This was, I don't. It was just crazy to me. You had so much going on this past week. But one thing I wanted to bring up, because I'm sure a majority of the conversation will then shift to basketball. But to me, what we saw Saturday in East Lansing, I think you can give a lot of credit to Tom Allen for what he accomplished in 2019 and 2020. But to me, what happened Saturday might be arguably his best coaching job of his time at Indiana, because to be down 24-7, to have a team that's not bowl eligible. Yes, it's a rivalry game, but like you said, this team to be down and out a little bit at halftime, I have no idea how he was able to rally the troops, but I've been critical of Tom Allen this season. He found something, they responded, and now you got a little bit of momentum. And as disastrous as we talked about this season being, you win 2 rivalry games to close out the season. You're not going bowling, but that at least gives you something to carry over into this offseason and build some momentum.
Well, and that's what I'm looking forward to this week, to see if Indiana can, build on what they just did, because it's going to be very difficult to do that against Purdue. This is a rivalry game. Yes, there's no question. Everybody will be up for it. It'll be exciting in that context. However, this football team has struggled to stop big plays here most of the year, and Purdue is very capable of making a big play heyday out of this ball game if Indiana's defense doesn't show up. That's what's concerning me more than anything else, because what we saw on Saturday against Michigan State, that first half, the big plays that Michigan State had in the second quarter, I mean, play after play after play, it was ridiculous. And granted, the defense is beat up a little bit, and the linebacking core is really struggling at this point from the standpoint of having anybody healthy. When you switch Brian Fitzgerald down to the linebacker role as a starter, after you lose Bradley Jennings in this ball, well, actually didn't even play in this ball game. Jared Casey comes back. Didn't look like the Jared Casey we saw at the beginning of the year, and he's been out most of the season now. Cam Jones is still not back and probably won't be for this game either. I'm not going to hold my breath on that. I'm sure he'll try, but whether he can play or not is anybody's guess. And he's the best defensive player on this football team. So I don't know what we're going to see from the defense in this contest. What does make me or excites me is that this team didn't give up Saturday. I thought they did at halftime. I thought at halftime they walked off. I didn't see anybody's. I thought heads were down. I thought for sure the second half was going to be a blowout. And somehow some way they found a way to get it done. And I give them a lot of credit for that. But I also would tell you this: I think Michigan State went to the locker room thinking this game is over with. We're going to start planning our parties for tonight. Because they were going to become bowl eligible with a win here. It was 24-7, and it didn't look like Indiana had a prayer in the second half. And all of a sudden, one of the administrative people came out of the locker room, I guess, and because the one end of the field is at the end where Indiana was headed for that first touchdown. And he said, I saw Sean Shivers coming at me. I'm saying, what's going on here? All of a sudden, Sean Shivers is in the end zone 79 yards later, and Indiana's back in the ball game. And at least you thought they were back in the ball game for a short period of time. Nobody was getting cocky at that point. But the fact of the matter is, from that point on, this team looked like they found a new spark, a new life, whatever. They just played differently. And Dexter Williams had a lot to do with that. Dexter Williams, the fact that he can move with his legs. Obviously, he only threw the ball 7 times. And when I had our pregame interview with Tom Allen for the pregame show, I asked him what was going to be the key in this ball game. He says, we're going to run the football. And I almost went, what? You're going to run the football? Yeah, babe, we'll run the football all year. And I mean, I was incredulous at that point. I didn't say anything like that, or I didn't act like I was incredulous, but I was incredulous because the offensive line hadn't blocked anybody all year long. I mean, that's just fact. But when you looked at what they did in the second half, it was all with the legs for the most part until the second overtime in which Dexter throws 2 big passes to A.J. Barner and we win the ball game. I mean, it was the running game that took off, and it was because Dexter Williams gave them another guy that people had to be aware of, and all of a sudden the run game opens up just enough for Indiana to get the job done. So I don't know how to describe it any other way. It was not a miracle, but it was certainly close.
Yeah, I'm going to today at the presser. The question I have for Walt Bell is with not throwing throughout the game because that's not the forte of Dexter Williams. How he got the onions to call the play that he called for A.J. Barner that worked so beautifully, and then after they score to come right back with a pass again. For the 2-point conversion, I was like, wow. It was just boom, boom. But big plays, Don, for Indiana. They come out you mentioned that 79-yard run by Sean Shivers, which, man, Indiana fans have been hoping for that all season. But
right.
MSU goes back and scores, but then here comes Jalen Williams to put some magic on there. And boom, Jalen Lucas, 13 seconds after Michigan State scores, he goes 88 yards for his second kickoff return touchdown of the season. Indiana hadn't had one since 2012. Mm-hmm. And here's a stat that I was blown away by. Since 2017, Indiana was 0-38 when trailing by 17 or more points.
2003.
2003. Oh, my bad.
Well, I can tell you this, guys. I don't care. All I know is that Indiana found a way to win this football game.
Yep.
And found a way is the way to put it, because honestly, I think 98, maybe that 99.9% of the Hoosier Nation thought this season was over at halftime. And I was one of them.
I promise you. I'm shocked that I said earlier that the moxie that this team, I said this was just on guts, grit, moxie. It was Tom Allen, and on the sideline, I was laughing because his cheek was bloodied. He jumped into somebody's arms on one play. He lost his glasses on another play, and he's jumping around. He's got blood on his cheek. I'm like, it's quintessential Tom Allen, and I'm like going, man. If you want to know, there you go. But yeah, it cracked me up. Indiana basketball, 2 big wins one big win, but 2 wins for the squad. The big one, though, of course, coming Friday night at Xavier, road environment, tough, a great early season test for these guys. It wasn't easy, but they did exactly what they needed to do and to win that game. And Trace Jackson Davis was a superstar.
No question. Jackson Davis carried Indiana in that game, but Xavier Johnson had a lot to do with it as well. His performance, even though you got to live with what X does occasionally, and some of the things that he does, especially at the end of this ball game, almost got Indiana beat.
Live by the X, die by the X, baby.
But he scored 23 in the game, and he was so proficient shooting the basketball, 7 of 8 from the field, hit both 3-pointers that he shot. He didn't have that many assists in the game, just had 2, but he was such a factor, and he had 7 rebounds. I mean, and he just gets under the skin of the opposing team, no matter how you look at it. And he's a quintessential guy, just like the Kunkel kid was for Xavier. He's kind of like that guy in the sense that you're really glad he's on your team, and if he's not on your team, you hate his guts. But that's just the way. That's the way he plays. I mean,
Were you on the side? Did they have you guys on the side of the benches, or were you opposite of that?
We were opposite the benches, and we were up in a corner. It's a really beautiful stadium, but it's one of the worst broadcast locations in the history of mankind. Not because of the location itself, because they gave you no room. I mean, you literally couldn't sit. You could only sit 2 people at our table. The equipment, Jake Robinson had our equipment behind us, sitting on his carrying case that he brings all the equipment in. Had to sit his stuff on there. We had one. If you were a third person, had to try to sit there. You couldn't. They had a chair in between some kind of a big frame type thing, and you had to push your chair back against that. If you were beyond 180 pounds, you couldn't sit there, because it literally you were crushed in there, like you would be sitting in there like this.
Oh man.
I mean, it was ridiculous. So
is it worse than Duke?
No. Oh yeah, much worse, because of the cramped condition. I mean, you literally have no place to put anything. It's literally, it's the worst place I've ever broadcast from, in the sense of not because of you couldn't see, because you had a decent. I mean, a lot of places now are putting us up, which is not a problem for me. I'd rather be up, to be quite honest. I don't want coaches and referees and stuff standing in front of me, so I don't like sitting at right by the bench. But nevertheless, the location was fine. It was just the space that we had was awful. Why did I get off on that tangent? Nobody cares. I mean, they don't. Nobody really cares about that. They don't care that I'm having a problem. But look, this game, in my opinion, was huge for this team from the standpoint confidence. Winning away from home against a quality basketball team who's going to be ranked in the top 25 shortly. You're playing against a team that Sean Miller, whether you like him or not, is a tremendous basketball coach. He gets his kids to play as hard as anybody out there in college basketball, and they've got the talent and the tools to be a top 20 team, maybe top 15 team as the season progresses. They've got those kinds of tools. For Indiana to win this game, it gives this team more confidence, perhaps, or should give them more confidence that they can beat anybody that they play when they play on the road. And that, to me, was the most important part of this win.
One of the things I'm kind of interested in your take on, Don, is down the stretch, Indiana, they did their best to try to almost give this game away. Missed free throws. Malik Renew missed a couple. Xavier Johnson missed one. Jalen Hood-Schifino missed a jump shot late. So Xavier had chances, but Indiana was able to persevere through. I mean, to me, I think you can look back and say, why was Malik Renew on the floor? Why was Jalen Hood-Schifino, those freshmen? I like that call, whether it works out or not, win or lose, because I think you got to get those guys experience in those situations. And even though this time it didn't work, this time they didn't make those plays, just getting comfortable in those type of scenarios, I think will be huge benefits for them come Big Ten season.
I do too. I mean, I have no problem with either one of those players being out there, because number one, I think Jalen Hood-Schifino is a really smart basketball player. He's forcing it a little bit right now because I think his shot's not falling, and we saw evidence of that yesterday in the Miami game because he started putting up all those shots at the beginning. I think he is trying to gain regain his shot touch or his belief that he can knock down a shot. But he did as the game progressed, and hopefully that helps him from a confidence perspective. But he's a smart kid, and he doesn't make very many bad decisions out there in the court. And Renew is the same way. I mean, the kid is really talented, and he's not the greatest athlete in the world. He's not as explosive as Trace Jackson Davis, but his touch, his feel, his footwork are just sensational. And he's a guy that's going to be around Indiana for a couple of years for sure, because he's got things he still has to get better at. And he doesn't have that same athleticism that Trace does that they're looking for in the NBA yet. I mean, he may gain that, and he's probably going to. But I just like the fact that he's such a solid player, and I think he really cares. When he got the technical foul, I was told he got that technical and he said, "I didn't do anything, coach." I guess he was almost in tears. He was so upset about it. That to me tells me a lot about this kid.
Yeah,
that's why I asked about where you were, because both technicals, I was told that X didn't say anything, nor did Malik, that it was just the stare. But the benches are sitting there harping on you the whole time, and that is allowed to go on. They're sitting there just sticking you from right behind you. You suck. You can't shoot, miss. And so you turn around and give them, there you go. I think, man, that's just a BS technical. But
here's the thing: the officials have been told that's an emphasis this year.
Yeah,
and you got to recognize it as a player. As a player, you got to have the maturity and the ability to say, I can't do these kinds of things. And it's hard. I mean, it's really hard because you want to go around and flip them off or whatever you want to do. That's the last thing you want to do, because you will get in trouble for that. But my point is that's kind of the feeling that you have, and you got to get past that. You just can't allow it to affect you. And so that's a part of growing into your maturity and that type of thing as a player. So they've got to be able to handle it. Don't stare at somebody. Celebrate with your team when you're going down the floor, high five, whatever the case may be. Just forget about the getting back at him, because you just got back at him by making the play.
Yeah.